Okay, so today we're going to be talking about ecstasy in our series of videos on drugs. Again, this is more what is ecstasy rather than thinking about treatment or pathological use. Everything starts with an E. The first mention of ecstasy in the UK press was in the mid-80s, before the big boom of ecstasy use, popularised by the Hampstead dinner party set as the yuppie way of knowledge, and so even then it was regarded as a drug of introspection, and we'll see later on in the talk how it started off that way as well. 1988 was really the start of acid house and then the rave music scene. So as I'm sure you'll all know, acid house originated in Chicago, and it was really the start of the electronic. Well, not the start, but that's where acid house originated from. It wasn't really the start of electronic music, and this preceded the whole of the rave scene. So really a big change in drug use and the drug use culture in the UK through the 80s. So the start of the 80s was really quite dominated by heroin and solvents, and the 80s in the UK was quite a period of depression, and really the economic boom came in the late 80s and the 90s. So a big difference. So that you can see there, that's an ecstasy pill. So these are called doves, either white doves or love doves. And certainly in the late 80s, early 90s, these would cost £15, and one of these would set you up for the whole night. So if you took one of these at 11 p.m, got to the club at 11:30, you'd still be going by 6 o'clock in the morning. And it was 1988 that was called the second summer of love. So this was really the start of big raves. So acid house going into house music, and then rave music, the various types. So ecstasy, what is it? MDMA. So that's the chemical name for it. It's a variety. It's a variation on amphetamine, and we'll see in the amphetamine lecture how similar all these drugs are in terms of chemical structure. So typically known as E. Other slang terms, so more commonly now it's known as either Mandy or Molly. Before it was either E or pills, or the E's were known by their logo. So, have you got any doves? Would be a question. So predominantly these affect the serotonin, noradrenaline, and dopaminergic pathways. Slightly different to, the main difference between this ecstasy and cocaine and amphetamines is a serotonergic action. So certainly the experience is quite different. Compared to just pure stimulants, you will have some visual effects, so visual illusions rather than hallucinations. So it certainly makes laser lights look very interesting. So where did it all come from? So this is a chemical that was synthesised originally by this chap in 1912. Then there was further work done on this chemical by Alexander Shulgin. We'll talk a lot more about this chap when we talk about the so-called legal highs. So this chap was a top-notch chemist in the 60s and 70s, and he decided to leave corporate and academic life and just invent drugs. And he would synthesize various drugs, and he and his wife and his friends would try them together, and he would just record the effects of all of them. Anyway, more on him in a later lecture. Now, this is what he recorded about MDMA. He was impressed by the disinhibiting effects and thought it could be useful in therapy, that's in psychotherapy. And he believed MDMA allowed users to strip away habits and perceive the world clearly. And he named the drug Window. So clearly none of these drugs had names at the time, so it was up. So he called it Window. Interestingly, now there's a lot of work on a re-interest in the therapeutic applications of MDMA, particularly in the treatment of treatment-resistant depression and PTSD. A lot of new work is going on about this. So one of his friends was a psychotherapist called Leo Zeff, and he experimented a lot with the use of MDMA in psychotherapy, because the feeling was it enhanced communication, reduced psychological defences, and it certainly increases the capacity for introspection. He named the drug Adam, believing it put users in a state of primordial innocence, and there's a lot to be said for that. And Adam is another slang word that's used for MDMA. Interestingly, I think it was also tried as an interrogation tool for captured spies. I'm not sure if it proved that successful. And it was then, and more recently, there's been an interest in its use in marriage guidance therapy. I'm quite sure it would work within the session, but I'm not sure of the results the following day. Okay, so another E here. So this is a Mitsubishi. This is an old slide with lots of old E's. I think I've got some modern ones coming up. So typically ecstasy is not used exclusively by itself. It certainly was in the in the 90s, but then the ecstasy pills were far more potent, and typically a user would have one pill for the night. That's not the case now, and pills are used in conjunction with lots of other drugs, partly because the other drugs are a lot more available now. I mean, you couldn't get them in the 90s quite so readily. So invariably, ecstasy is taken orally. I mean, you can grind it up and snort it, but invariably it's taken orally. It takes 30 to 40 minutes for an onset of action. Typically, initially, there's a feeling of nausea. That's the serotonin action. Quite similar to the effects that patients will get when they're taking an SSRI. So if you take an SSRI, sertraline, for example, on an empty stomach, patients will say that they'll feel a wave of nausea. This passes. Well, it says here peak effects after 60 minutes. I mean, maybe a little bit earlier than that. And then, depending on the potency of the pill, it will last for 2, 4. I think pills lasting for 6 and 8 hours these days are quite a rarity. Okay, some more modern pills. So you've got some Bitcoins, some Apples, some Teslas. Apparently Trump pills were quite popular. So they were big and orange with a Trump face and his quiff.
Who would want to put that in your mouth?
Well, there's a fair question there. I can't vouch for how good they are. No doubt they were the best, most beautiful pills ever.
So it makes you feel very sick.
Yeah. Well, so opinion is divided. Okay, so this is essentially what ecstasy is, and what I've done here is this is taken from a website which gives a user blog website of their experience. So this is an experience of somebody taking ecstasy for the first time, titled "I Feel Like Hugging Everybody." Unbelievable surge of energy and warmth, intense ecstasy, the perfect world. No other could have described what I was experiencing right then and there, beyond words. And there's more. I just grinned off my face. I feel like hugging everybody, then flinging herself around my neck. So I don't know if you guys have ever been to a rave, but certainly raves were full of people hugging each other. A lot of hugging would go on. So truly a fascinating discovery, and for people who were shy and introverted, it would release all of those inhibitions. And again, we spoke about some of the not hallucinatory, but the auditory and visual illusions that you have. So the appreciation of music and the light show is really intensified by ecstasy. So the state was pure, free and uninhibited. Okay. So, if you've heard the term "loved up," but it's a term that's associated with ecstasy, and it is as it sounds. It's their first E, he was told. He then got up, opened his arms wide, gave me a big hug. And again, as is said here, taking is there's not really any sexual vibe to it. It's a real innocence in terms of just being loved up and just wanting to hug everybody. Empathy was another term that was used to another name for the drug. So here talking about the visual effects, brighter lights, colours, physical energy, a strong empathy merging with the music to a trance-like state. And I think that's the end. So if you have questions and comments, please post them in the comment section below.